Holy cow, Alaska has earthquakes. What is up, everybody? Justin with Spire Realty Group. Obviously, we wanted to get down here and talk about one of the questions I get asked a ton of people who are not from Alaska, and that is about earthquakes. So, as residents of Alaska know, the ground shakes occasionally, right? And so, as Alaskans, we're pretty used to it, except for this last one in 2018 was a little bit of a shaker. But let me kind of give you some information and facts about earthquakes in Alaska. So, Alaska has more earthquakes than any other region in the United States. So that means moving to Alaska, obviously you don't have to deal with the deadly critters, snakes, stuff like that, tornadoes, hurricanes, but we do have earthquakes, and not just a few, but quite a lot. So, in fact, one of the most Alaska is considered one of the most seismically active areas in the world, and Alaska still kind of holds the record for the second largest earthquake ever recorded, which shook South Central Alaska in March 27th in 1964, and with a magnitude of 9.2, and that was the Good Friday earthquake. Now, we still hold the record for the largest on-land earthquake in North America in almost 150 years, and that was on the Denali Fault in Central Alaska on November 3rd of 2002 with a magnitude of 7.9. But what does that mean for you as you're moving to Alaska? So, and then how often do these big earthquakes happen? Fortunately, the big earthquakes don't happen very often. We haven't had a super large magnitude earthquakes as far as the 64 earthquake for obviously a very long time. We had the one in 2018. And so, historically speaking, most likely not going to have another one at least above that magnitude or higher for quite a long time. However, we do get a lot of small earthquakes that kind of come and go. They may wake you from your sleep. You maybe feel a little jarring, and of course you'll see all the Facebook and social media posts attached with that. Now, obviously, because of all the earthquakes that we have and the large earthquake in 1964, which just did a ton of property damage, our building codes have rapidly evolved to obviously facilitate the ground shaking. So, our local building codes and commercial building codes have all kind of developed to withstand these earthquakes. So commercial buildings are now built on rollers, and obviously there's earthquake strapping and all these different requirements that builders have to put in to make homes safe in the event we have a decently sized earthquake. So in 2018, a lot of the homes actually did fairly well that were newer construction and, of course, built since 1964 because a lot of the building codes have developed. And even since then, some of the older homes have been reinforced and, of course, development in certain areas because of the prevalence of earthquake or just even the land type and soil type, right, or ground type with the liquefaction has kind of deterred development in those areas. Now, with that being said, let me give you some quick stats on just how often these earthquakes are. So, like I said, in 1964, we are home to the second largest earthquake ever recorded, and we have 11% of the world's recorded earthquakes happen right here in Alaska. So, not a small amount. 3 out of 8 of the largest earthquakes in the world were right here in Alaska, and 7 out of 10 of the largest earthquakes in the United States were right here in Alaska. So obviously Alaska is, like I said, a pretty seismic region, and we are part of the Ring of Fire when, of course, we have some really large faults which attribute to, right, the amount of seismic activity here in Alaska. So since 1900, so about 120 something years now, we have one, what they say, great earthquake, basically magnitude 8 on the Richter scale higher every 13 years, one magnitude 7 to 8 on the Richter scale about every year, and 6 magnitude 6 to 7 on the Richter scale every year. And then we have 45 earthquakes that are on the Richter scale from 5 to 6 every year. And then 320 earthquakes per year that are on the magnitude and Richter scale of 4 to 5. And then we have, on average, 1,000 earthquakes every month here in Alaska. Most of them you can't feel. Most of them are located deep below the Earth's surface. And so if you ever go onto the international and national earthquake reporting system, you're able to see where all these earthquakes are happening and how often they're happening. It's actually really impressive. And of course, different parts of Alaska are going to have earthquakes and other parts are not going to feel them, right? And so just because it's all, we have that many in Alaska doesn't mean that you're constantly going to be shaking, which you're not. So just kind of put that fear aside. Now, should you expect earthquakes occasionally? Yes, right? However, it's normal. You'll get used to it, and the big ones don't happen very often. And since, our buildings are built to withstand all this stuff now, to kind of give you an example, right? So right after the 2018 earthquake, like I said, a lot of our building codes are made to withstand large earthquakes, right? And so a lot of our buildings were intact, right? Some of the older stuff or some of the stuff that was built on swamps and whatnot, and because of liquefaction, were damaged, but we didn't have any high fatalities or nothing like that. They did have a similar earthquake in an Asian country which doesn't quite have the building standards right, and they had a pretty significant loss of life as well as major building damage just because they're just not built to the same standard. And so, kind of goes to show you what these building codes and building standards really do to obviously help facilitate the movement of the buildings with these earthquakes. So anyways, we hope that you guys learned something about earthquakes. We're going to put some links right down here that kind of gives you some information to, of course, the international and national earthquake reporting, as well as to the state website of the Alaska Seismic Hazardous Safety Commission. And there's a bunch of awesome material on here that shows you exactly where all these earthquakes are, as well as a bunch of information which I just kind of gave you. And we will see you guys on the next one.